So this is in regards to the minimum service levels bill, which passed committee stage last evening by, I think it was 315 votes to 246, which will give the government the discretion, if you like, the Secretary of State, to impose minimum service levels for certain parts of the striking sectors. And I think in this particular regard, it's going to be aimed at the likes of rail workers and our emergency services, and will include border services and so forth. But what I think is the most concerning part of this piece of legislation, and let me be clear, unless somebody corrects me, there is no current right to strike in UK law. What is embedded in UK law is that unions must organise themselves according to conditions set out in the Trade Union and Labour Relations Consolidation Act 1992.
Snappy.
I know. So going back to what this piece of legislation is seeking to do is that during strike action, and the concern is that actually if the government is laying down legislation, are we looking at this strike action actually coming to an end anytime soon?
Yeah.
But what their proposal does is impose minimum service levels for those sectors that I mentioned, and do away with the automatic protection that one is afforded for unfair dismissal if you've been employed for 2 years or more, that your employer has followed due process.
Yeah.
So those automatic rights that one enjoys at the moment is going to be possibly done away with. The caveat on this bill is that it's subject to scrutiny in the House of Lords, and it's got a number of stages that it has to go through. But, of course, Labour has criticised the government for trying to rush this piece of legislation through so that it will not be properly scrutinised by Parliament. And, of course, we've seen this before with this government around the Bill of Rights. So the public need to be aware of the legislation that's being proposed, and in my mind, that again, just like the Bill of Rights, this is a lurch backwards for British justice and for employment rights. Yes, we are possibly, most of us agreed, that, you know, it is absolutely disruptive to have the strikes that we are seeing this week, and it's inconvenient. But there are parts of this legislation that is of concern.
In what way? So do you mean this is in terms of we live in a Western democracy, we must have the right to strike and cause disruption? You take that away from workers, and what is our culture? How do you describe where we live?
Well, I think what's of interest, absolutely, what's of interest is that this is, as I say, this is not the first time that we have seen this government imposing certain conditions and taking away, eroding those rights and the democracy, the pillars of democracy that we pride ourselves on in this country that are slowly being eroded. And, of course, the public, and that's one of the things that I have long spoken about, campaigned about, is the fact that legal rights mean absolutely nothing if you don't know what those rights are and you don't even know when they're being taken away. And here we have another piece of legislation that's eroding at that.
It's funny, though, isn't it, Sam? We're going to move on to our next story, but I think when it comes to strikes, most of us can kind of see both sides of the argument in a way. It's not one of these issues where you know, it really fires in your belly. I think most of us go, well, I can see it from the employer's point of view, but I can also see it from the worker's point of view. Do you think we've got it about right? Do we need these more kind of, sort of draconian, really, some of the legislations take away the powers of the individual against the corporation?
Well, Stephanie's given the brilliant legal analysis of it, but on the political side of it, I mean, the political reality is there are, you know, the strike contagion in this country. Every single union seems to be, you know, balloting members for strikes. And obviously the government needs to be seen to be doing something. And so this is we are doing something. Now, this will not impact the current wave of strikes. It's going to take quite a while to get through Parliament. So it's not going to stop the rail strikes in the next few months. It's not going to stop teacher strikes in the next few months. It will be more long-term. Now, getting it through the House of Lords is going to be difficult because there's going to be immense opposition there. But also, just on the kind of political side of it, Jacob Rees-Mogg, the former business secretary, now this was brought by Grant Shapps, the current business secretary. His predecessor, Jacob Rees-Mogg, is saying these laws are too vague.